All I see is that a guy who has been telling you tariffs are a good thing for years ended up not doing tariffs. If I have to guess, this was not the result he wanted. He wants the whole Canada, nothing less. I tried to warn people back then and I got like 3 likes. But starting this week, things are gonna get much more serious. You can't afford ignoring the writings on the wall anymore. This temporary result of the trade war is like a Bible verse. You can interpret it any way you want. Of course, you can interpret it as a sign that Canada and Mexico caved. I can't stop you from doing that. I gave up on changing the MAGA mindset a long time ago. All I see is that a guy who has been telling you tariffs are a good thing for years ended up not doing tariffs. So either it's not a win for him, or if it is a win, it means tariffs are not as good as he claimed after all. I don't care which way you want to go. I'm cool as long as there are no tariffs. Well, I'm not cool with this administration in general, but I'm relieved that the tariffs are put on hold because I don't want to skip a fucking meal because of the prices. Oh, for the record, I actually kind of support the tariffs on China because, as I said many times before, the Chinese market is simply too closed to warrant low tariffs in the first place. But that's another issue. There's just no justification for high tariffs on Mexico and Canada. So I'm okay with this result. If you want to count this as a glorious victory of your boy Donald, knock yourself out. I don't care. But if you think this little maneuver can somehow solve America's fentanyl problem in any tangible way, well, I'm gonna sell you not 1 but 2 bridges from the 3 gorges of China. How about that? Aren't they gorgeous? I don't know what exactly 4D checkers Donald was playing, but if I have to guess, this was not the result he wanted. If Canada and Mexico had given him what he wanted, why would he put the tariff on hold instead of just canceling it? Look at this crazy clip.
And we'll see what happens. I can't tell you what's going to happen.
You mentioned that he could agree to change your mind on the tariff?
Well, we can always, look, what I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection, military protection.
He wants the whole Canada, nothing less, which is not surprising. You don't need any social science training to see that. As long as you know a few people in your life, you should easily tell that Donald is not the type who bothers himself with a few fucking policy issues. He never bothered with those in the first 70 years of his life. If you look at someone like Donald and think, wow, this guy must really care about fentanyl victims, then you have a serious case of hallucination. I don't blame you. This kind of hallucination is actually pretty common in pop culture. Like when you watch those animation movies, there's always a benevolent king or queen or some shit. Even someone like Thanos, think about it, Thanos was portrayed as a sensitive guy who just voluntarily retired into a garden or something. He was like George Washington, but with a focus on overpopulation. Maybe some of these writers are just too nice and it's hard for them to imagine someone who just genuinely enjoy doing bad shit. For Donald, obviously the only thing that matters is power, not fentanyl, not trade deficit, especially not the goddamn working class. When it comes to Canada, he wants an old-fashioned imperial expansion, but sending troops to Canada wouldn't be very popular, so he chose the second best, the trade war. That's all it's about. He'll probably keep trying until his last day in office. I just hope that day is not too far ahead. Which leads me to the second topic. I bet you guys all saw this. So far, he has mentioned 4 objects for his plans for territorial expansion. Firstly, Greenland, and then Canada, and then the Panama Canal, and now Gaza. 4 of them. If it's just one of them, you can say, okay, it's just a joke. Or maybe, it's some bluffing to acquire some concessions. But 4 of them. There's no way it's just a joke or a negotiation tactic or some shit like that. It's his fucking dream now. Do you happen to remember another historical figure who was also crazy about territorial expansions and domestic racial rhetorics? Hint, he had something under his nose. I can't express how precarious this situation is. Most wars in human history started as territorial expansions, and such expansions used to be considered normal and acceptable because, if I can take it, why the fuck not? That's why national borders almost never stopped changing in the past. Just imagine a room of preschoolers told by their teacher, okay, if you want some toy, just grab it from another kid. Yeah, that's what happened in the entirety of human history until 1945. That rule of jungle may be natural, but it was by no means pleasant. So after 1945, things got a little bit better because the winners of the World War II, especially the United States, decided to try something different. So they basically told the kids that if a toy belonged to you historically, then you can keep having it. But if you grabbed it from someone else, you have to give it up. And we're gonna keep this status quo indefinitely. So this anarchic room of preschoolers finally started to stay put. Not easy. But everything changed starting this week. Well, actually, I would say it started changing since 2014, when Putin suddenly annexed Crimea out of the blue. It was alarming enough to me, but to most people it was just some isolated event, no big deal. I tried to warn people back then and I got like 3 likes. But starting this week, things are gonna get much more serious. You can't afford ignoring the writings on the wall anymore. The United States is not just any country. It's not Russia in 2014, and it's not Germany in the 1940s. Right now, it is the cornerstone of global security and global economic production and global finance. If this giant freak all of a sudden decides to go primal and restart its territorial conquests, which country can stop it? Germany was barely stopped in the 40s, and now who's gonna stop the United States? It's like a preschool teacher decides to participate in a fist fight over toys. I know it's funny to picture, but it's not fun for the kids. I know what some of you are thinking right now. Maybe it's a problem for other countries, but we are the strongest one, so we don't give a fuck. It's other countries' problems, not ours. Well, if only it's that simple. First of all, the US may be the strongest country, but it's not the only country with territorial ambitions. Let me ask you this. What will stop China from bombing Taiwan if both the US and Russia are happily annexing other countries' territories? Enlighten me if you have a solution. And Venezuela, a country already with the largest oil reserve in Latin America, has been threatening another oil-rich country for years. Sort of like Saddam Hussein trying to swallow Kuwait. Well, of course, Maduro hasn't made a move because he was worried what the US would do. Now give me one reason Venezuela will stay put if the US joins the annexation games. Just give me one reason, please. In fact, there are surveys showing that in almost every country there are some people believe that other countries have their territories. Territorial grudges are universal. This map is just for European countries, but I can assure you, every country is the same. National borders don't have a scientific criterion or something. They're all just artificial agreements. Not a single national border is objectively fair. There's no such thing as fair borders. So the only reason countries stay put in their territories is because of the peer pressure, not because they believe it's fair. Now, if the top dog in the world starts to rob territories by force, whether through a trade war or a regular war, it will be a Pandora's box. Every country in the world will try to take a bite, just like the pre-1945 state of the world. I can't repeat this enough. But territorial stability is not a natural way of life. Animals fight for territories all the time. So if we want peace, we have to establish a norm against our natural instinct. So you can imagine how fragile that norm is. If the biggest player in town decides that, fuck it, let's go primal, what will happen? Well, just check the world history in any given year before 1945. Any year you pick. It was hell, straight up. Of course, that's what some of you assholes want to see, right? Life is boring. You want some actions. People can die as long as your ass is not drafted. Blah, 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 blah. I know. If you think other people's deaths can give you good drama, then there's no way for me to convince you otherwise. I'm not a psychiatrist. Even if I were, psychopathy is really hard to cure. How can you cure something so natural and frequent in human history? I don't think so. Maybe you can restrain that tendency with a non-psychopathic government, which unfortunately is not there anymore. I admit I've always had this weakness about America ever since I was a kid in China. Not because America was particularly good. If you read any social science, you can pretty easily tell that there are a lot of countries more pleasant, more peaceful, and more democratic than the United States. It's not the best country, not by a million miles. But I still have special feelings about this country because it's the reason that those other countries could become free in the first place. It's the reason Stalin didn't take over Western Europe. It's the reason that North Korea has yet to take over South Korea. And it's the reason that China has yet to take Taiwan. You see what I mean? America is like a knucklehead anti-hero. It's an asshole most of the days, but when duty called, it would step up and keep everything from falling apart. How can you not love it? I guess maybe it's too much to ask. Maybe you guys are tired of that role and want to play Hitler instead. Maybe I'm just naive to expect America to be any different from the past empires. But I still have hope, and I'm gonna hold on to that hope a little longer because how else can I get up in the morning?